Hey folks, welcome back to HeartGold vs. Crystal. We are here at the Indigo Plateau, ready to take on the second round of the Elite Four. This is a tradition that started in Fire Red and Leaf Green. Once you've completed the Elite Four the first time, you can return and fight them with slightly higher levels and modified teams. And this is probably your best bet for late game grinding, honestly. So let's get going. The actual team members of this Elite Four, of course, have not changed. Still Will, Koga, Bruno, and Karen. Anyway, you can see right off the bat that Will has shifted his team a little bit. Basically, I think all of the Elite Four members have added a few 3rd and 4th generation Pokemon to their repertoire. And Will starts out with a Bronzong. Now, Bronzong, you should keep in mind, has two possible abilities, Heatproof and Levitate. This one has Heatproof, which means that it is vulnerable to Earthquake, and thus Earthquake is a very good thing in order to take it down. Bronzong is usually really good defensively, so you'll want a buff move, possibly boosted. But there's a good old Jinx. We recognize Jinx, don't we? Take it out the same way you did the first time. And of course, my only fire type move is on a flying type, which isn't great against Jinx, since it's part ice. But we'll find that now that Klaus has Rock Slide in his repertoire, he's actually really useful for taking a number of things down, as opposed to whatever he had before. I don't even remember. I have terrible memory. But the extra power from Rock Slide really actually helps a lot a couple times throughout this challenge. Anyway, next up we have Gardevoir. Gardevoir is a 3rd generation Pokemon. It is pure Psychic type. Kind of the Abra of Hoenn, basically. It's less of a pain to catch, more of a pain to train, because it starts out without any attack moves until level 6, and even then the Poochyena in the area will be completely immune. But it is primarily a special attacker, I think. It's not like huge Blast Cannon. It looks fairly bulky from the appearance of that Dark Pulse. But the thing to keep in mind with this Gardevoir is that it has Focus Blast. And Focus Blast, as I mentioned probably the last episode, it's a special fighting type move that can do quite a number to the dark types that you probably have in store for the psychic types here. And alas, it's strong enough that Everett can't take 2 of them, and that means it's actually really strong. Not many moves can claim to 2-shot Everett. If I were really crazy or patient, which I am, I could have just used some Hyper Potions on Everett, installed him out of Focus Blast, or waited for it to miss, because Focus Blast does miss. But opted not to do that. Anyway, Bree is the doctor's recommendation for taking care of this thing. Bree has Shadow Ball, which is wonderful. And hopefully Bree will be doing a pretty good job. Shadow Ball is one of the best bets here, and you probably have it. Anyway, now Grumpig, another 3rd generation Psychic type. And Grumpig is most definitely a defensive Pokemon. So if you were like one-shotting Gardevoir, don't expect to one-shot Grumpig. Look at that. He's a cool guy though. It's purple and adorable and roly-poly, and unfortunately not that great competitively. But if it may be a Pokemon that you have to use a Whittling tactic on, because it is bulky. But overall, Will hasn't been too tricky. He is, after all, the first member of the Elite Four. And the rest of his team is nothing you haven't seen before, just at a higher level. You got Slowbro and Xatu after this. If you had trouble with Slowbro before, you should probably keep in mind that it's still the same Slowbro. And it does have Amnesia, which I think it had before. Probably, wouldn't be surprised. But that will severely dampen your damaging abilities from the special side of things. And of course it lives by a hair, because it's a jerk. What a jerk. Yeah, the Slowbro. It's a jerk. But again, it's not going to pull any punches. You've seen what it dishes out. You should be prepared. You have no one to blame but yourself. Now, it'd be really nice if I got a special defense drop from that Shadow Ball. Like that. Because that can help counteract that amnesia that we just ran into. But alas, he got his attack in first, but Bree did a good job here. And let's try attacking from a different angle. This time we do have a grass-type attack, so let's use Giga Drain. Very nice. And then finally Xatu. We saw 2 of these the first time. It's been reduced to 1, but it's still taken care of in the same manner. And that manner is Rock Slide. Taking it like a beast class. But again, rock, electric, ice, all the various things you've been using to take care of flying types will apply here. It stinks. There's a lot of cool stuff to say about the new members of their teams. But the old members, as far as I'm aware, haven't changed a whole lot. Still follow the same tactics, they're still the same Pokemon. There'll be a little bit of shake-up a little later on with a later member. But we'll get to that when we come to it. And then Webster with the Sucker Punch. Very nice. That's right, I'm using a Poison type to take out Psychic types. What are you gonna do about it? And speaking of Poison types, check out Koga after this commercial break. Alrighty, Koga time. Now you'll notice that I'm not showing a Crystal fight for these. For once, that's not because I didn't want to bother or that they're not different enough to warrant showing. There are no rematches in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, so for once I'm justified. And I'm also cramming, like, most of the Elite Four, just the Elite Four Sans the Champion, into this one video, so it excuse the commercial breaks. Anyway, here's a Skuntank, a 4th generation Poison Dark type, here to ruin your day when you try to bring in a Psychic type. Normally people would bring in Psychic types because they're super effective against Poison, but this Skuntank, straight out of the gate, is immune to Psychic and will ruin your day. Now, it would have been the coolest thing ever if I had managed to Earthquake him while he was underground, because that would further increase the damage that I'm inflicting. But getting off the Swords Dance was actually really advantageous, because just about everything on his team is not fond of Earthquake. Like, I think I made use of this before, and other than his Crobat, everything is going to have trouble. Like this Venomoth, I could use Flamethrower, I could use Rock Slide, but I'm going to use Earthquake, because I'm cool like that. But here we have Double Team. Double Team's a jerk. I think he abused it in the original fight, but he's definitely abusing it now. Koga loves to up his evasion. Venomoth is not the only one on his team to employ this tactic. Best thing you can do would be to kill them before they set up the double teams. Next best thing is to have a perfect accuracy move, but God knows that those are too weak for this point in the game other than Aura Sphere, and that isn't very super effective against these guys. Anyway, here's a Swalot. It's the 3rd generation Hoenn equivalent of Muck, basically. It's even purple, too. But it's really cute. Its pre-evolution's cuter, but it's pretty cute. It's defensive, but it doesn't really get to show its stuff in this fight because Sandra is just cool like that. Again, I think your best option for most of Koga's Pokemon is to kill them before they can do anything, because they'll inflict status, they'll up evasion, and that's no fun. This here is a Toxicroak. It's a 4th generation poison fighting type. And poor Koga, this thing is quadruple weak to Psychic. So if you're using a Psychic type for most of this fight, it will not have fun. It is really cool, and I think it's primarily offensive. It's really cool, but oh good lord, its typing is just not helpful for this guy. Anyway, there's the problem in Sandra's Earthquake Sweep is Crobat. We've met this guy before. And let's see what a Rock Slide will do to him. I mean, we've just been dealing with Crobat and Golbat and other things with the question, so it's not going to surprise you too much. It will have Fly, if you're worried about that, I guess. If for whatever reason your primary means of attack is an Executor, that would be weak to Fly, I guess. I can't think of many things that you'd be using against this team that Fly would be necessarily dangerous to. And of course, because Rock Slide is so awesome, it manages to be a 2-shot on Crobat. Finally, going down as easily as you're supposed to. And then finally Muck. We all remember Muck, right? Physical defensive dude? Something like that? I don't know. Got a number of ideas for this Muck, but Webster here, as a part poison type, can't get poisoned. So, if this turns into a horrible, enduring battle, that's one thing on my side. But Muck is another Pokemon that really likes to abuse Minimize, and that's going to be really annoying. Webster here, trying out Psychic. Overall, I don't think it was the best idea, because, I mean, having Psychic's nice, I guess, but relying on it on a primarily physical attacker really isn't doing me many favors. You can tell it's doing kind of piss damage. And every time I don't KO this Muck, it's getting up another Minimize, making it harder for me to actually hit the damn thing. Oh, and there's a Swagger, which I believe prompts me to move on to the physical side of things. Screw the super effective, just do damage. Getting good luck with the Psychic so far, but that will not persist. If things had all gone according to plan, I think the next Psychic might have KO'd or left it in, like, the Ultra Red. But alas, that things don't go to plan. It goes by just to let you know. Because Confusion compounded with Minimize, and yeah, that Swagger caused a decent amount of damage there. You can see there, just if you're interested in that sort of thing, Muck is recovering a little bit of HP every turn using an item called the Black Sludge, which is essentially a leftovers that is exclusive to poison types. I think the idea is that if your opponent decides to use like Thief or something, it will like disrupt their jams, their flow. It will hurt them. Or possibly it's to get around tournaments that have item claws for some reason, like the Battle Tower I think might have item claws, I'm not sure. As in, not allowing multiple of the same item on your team. But overall, it seems rather silly and situational. I'm not sure what's up with that. Anyway, in the wake of Webster's defeat there, Sandra comes in and now has +4 attack. Assuming we can get an Earthquake in, it will be super effective stabbed and +4 attack. It's going to KO this thing, if it connects, which hopefully it will. It has 2 Minimizes up and I have to get through Confusion. But it will KO when it eventually hits. I swear to God, it will eventually hit. Oh, and there's the Toxic that Webster was avoiding. Which means we're on even more of a ticking time bomb. Eventually, that Toxic will get out of control if we keep missing our Earthquakes. We don't want that to happen, so let's just try to hit on the first turn. Sound good? Sound good. And down it goes. And that takes care of Koga. Next up is Bruno, after this commercial break. Alrighty, it's time for Bruno. Let's get going. Bruno, as you will recall, is a fighting type Elite Four member. And he always trains to the extreme, and I think he is third on my tier of heterosexual man crushes. It's a distant third. But he leads off with a Hitmontop as he did before. And this time around, I have Frida evolved, which is fantabulastic. It means I can take a lot more hits from these guys with Frida, unless they decide to have Fire Punch or something, which would be unfortunate. And it also means that my Psychics are going to put off a lot more damage. Overall, a win-win situation. But for now, Bruno seems to be sticking to the books. He's got Hitmontop, Hitmon lead, pretty sure he still has Hitmonchan in there somewhere. Into a Champ, most likely. And there, Swagger working completely to his advantage. Since Frida is a Psychic, is a special attacker, I don't get any benefit out of that Swagger. But as you can see, good lord, these Psychics are wrecking his team. Goes to show what being level 65 and evolved will do. Anyway, first new Pokemon on his team is Hariyama, which is a third generation fighting type, pure fighting. And I can't really think of an equivalent. It's two-stage. It's bulky, as you could probably tell from its appearance. It dishes out decent damage, and it takes hits pretty decently. It's not, it doesn't particularly excel in either one, as far as I'm aware. But, oh, that's such a beautiful thing right there. Oh, that's such an ugly, horrible thing right there. How dare you live by a shred. Oh, but there's a dangerous thing. Payback. It's a Dark-type move that does a lot more damage, I believe, when you've taken damage that turn. So, down goes Frida. Thus ends the Psychic Sweep. Guess we'll have to switch over to some other method. Webster was not the method that I envisioned. I'm gonna admit. Was not expecting that of my past self, but hey, who knows? I'm sure I had a reason. Oh, right, because Webster has Psychic. That's totally a good reason, right? Right? We saw how that worked out against Muck, right? Right. I mean, it's not a terrible idea. Webster does, after all, resist fighting moves since he's part poison. But Psychic didn't do a whole lot of damage to various things. Anyway, there's a Machamp. Sucker Punch on Machamp, not going to do much. And Machamp, of course, has Stone Edge. Basically, the go-to Rock-type move for all your killing needs. Not really what you want to send in a Bug-type against. And it is also detrimental to any Flying types that you might bring in against these guys. Flying types being the other primary tactic for taking out fighting types, aside from Psychic. That Stone Edge will wreck basically any flying type you bring in, other than, like, I don't know, a Skarmory. Or something that kills everything so fast that it won't get touched. Anyway, there's Machamp showing off its no-guard ability. It has Dynamic Punch. And I think I mentioned before, and as has probably been demonstrated before, it automatically confuses upon hitting, and Machamp has the no-guard ability, so it will always hit. And also, it does a hell of a lot of damage to Everett. Everett is finally kind of seeing lots of damage being done to him, which is very rare. This Elite Four is nothing to scoff at. But anyway, let's see who we can bring in against this Machamp and Menace. Frida, why not? After all, resist the Dynamic Punch, and I don't know if the Machamp has any Dark-type moves. Or Fire Punch, or anything of that sort. But what I do know is that it's a horrible jerk, and it should feel ashamed for not dying when it should. Anyways, you can see Stone Edge, very powerful move even when it's neutral effective, and the clincher is that it has a high critical hit ratio. That means you may send in a Pokemon that should, by all legal right, survive, and it won't. I've had it happen, I've seen it, man. It's a horrible thing. But luckily Machamp's slow as shit, so Frida outspeeds it. Fantastic. And let's see, Bruno's final Pokemon there is Lucario. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Lucario, but if you're not, it is the 4th generation Fighting Steel type. And it was kind of a mascot of sorts for the 4th generation. It had its own movie, it popped up in Smash Brothers Brawl, had cool event things related to it. But overall, I much prefer preying on its Steel type than its Fighting type. Ooh, and a burn to boot. Nice. You probably won't take care of it in the same way that you take care of the rest of the team, but you probably have something to deal with Steel types by this point. If not, send an Earthquaker, maybe? Or just take care of it like you took care of Rusty at Jasmine's gym. And then finally we have Hitmonchan. I was hoping to go out with a bang on the Lucario, but okay, Hitmonchan. Hitmonchan that I guess does not have Fire Punch, so Frida need not fear. Yeah, Drain Punch. Drain Punch is an interesting move, I guess. It was the signature move of the Fighting Gym in the 4th generation, and it essentially acts like Mega Drain or Giga Drain, except it's Fighting type. Interesting gimmick, not used very often. And Hitmonchan goes down. Frida getting a little bit of revenge for not doing so much in the last round. And that takes care of Bruno. Check out Karen after this commercial break. Alrighty, Karen, final member of the Elite Four before the champion. And you will remember that she is a Dark-type user, and that she also resembles Agatha quite a bit. And there are quite a few interesting Dark types that she's added to her team. So be prepared. First up we have Weavile. This is the evolution of Sneasel that I mentioned. And did she have Sneasel before? I don't even remember. I have a terrible memory. But the nice thing about Weavile is that, like Sneasel, which I addressed in the question fight in the last episode, it is quadruple weak to fighting. And that means if Bree can live an Ice Punch, Bree can absolutely destroy it. Weavile is not a durable Pokemon by any means, so preying on a quadruple weakness will cause it to go down very quickly. But it could wreck your team if you're not prepared. Next up we have Honchkrow. Honchkrow is the evolution of Murkrow, and I believe she had a Murkrow before, so she must have evolved it. And again, I'm preying on the secondary type here. We have Spark Flying, obviously, because it's a bird. Big Dumbo. And Rock Slide is the way to go. Now Honchkrow is weird compared to Murkrow, because Honchkrow is bulkier, but slower. It's not like all of its stats got raised through the evolution. It had a bit of a trade-off. But it's not bulky enough to live two Rock Slides, so worked out nicely there. And then Houndoom. Many people have many fond memories of this Houndoom, which likes to use Nasty Plot, I think in both rounds. And if you let it set up, it will destroy you. So don't let it set up, come out with guns blazing, and use your Cramp Hammer. This is the power of a crab hammer. Waited so long to get that move, and it was so worth it. And then Spiritomb. Spiritomb is, I think, the highlight of her team in terms of interesting Pokemon. Spiritomb is interesting because it's one of two Pokemon with the Ghost Dark type combination, which has literally 0 weaknesses, other than being killed. Yeah, but that type combination is actually weak to no type. The only thing that comes close to being similar is Electros in 5th generation, which is a levitating electric type, but that can be grounded. And actually, now that I think about it, you can use Foresight to get rid of the ghost thing, and then use fighting type moves on the dark type, and that would cause super effective, but it's cool. It's cool, damn it. Don't be hating. Anyway, last team member. Oh, good lord, are we already on the last team member? Maybe not, but most prominent team member is Umbreon. We've dealt with Umbreons before. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the subject of Umbreons. And yeah, it's gonna be a while, this thing. But getting in the Leech Seed early, which allows me to get a constant drain on its HP, and that means it will eventually go down with enough patience, and you know that I'm a very patient man. This Umbreon varies a little bit from Everett in that it has the move Curse, which lowers its speed but increases its physical offense and defense. And that means that it could be a butt to take down if you're trying to use physical fighting moves, and it could potentially cause a lot of damage to you if you let it set up a lot. But that's not really what's going on here. What's going on here is a mirror match to end all mirror matches. Yeah, you're not gonna watch all of that. That would have been the most tedious thing. Actually, I take that back. There's more tedious things in the world. But Umbreon versus Umbreon is not a thrilling battle, and you don't need to see all of that. It was Leech Seed, Confusion, ahoy. But eventually went down, and you can see Everett survived the encounter more or less intact. Oh, and then we do have one last Pokemon here, Absol. Absol is a hell of a cool of a Pokemon. It's one of those dark types that all the 10-year-olds see and they're like, oh my god, I want that. It's a pure dark type, 3rd generation. I believe a physical attacker. And it's said to bring misfortune wherever it goes. Misfortune. When in actuality it just follows misfortune everywhere. Anyway, this Absol is apparently an idiot because it used Perish Song, which causes all the Pokemon on the field that hear it, aside from Pokemon that have soundproof, to faint in 3 turns. Normally the AI would switch out on the last turn, but Absol is the last Pokemon, so it can't do that. It has killed itself. It has no hope to survive, and it has no one to blame but itself. And Karen, no full restores will protect you from yourself. God, that was just a really stupid move, Absol. I'm sorry, you're dumb. But he did take down Klaus with him, I guess, so no experience gained. And if you were on your last Pokemon, you would lose this battle. But that was dumb. Anyway, that takes care of the Elite Four. Check out the champion next time.